Most people try to change their life by changing their actions first. They wake up earlier, they eat healthier, they scroll less, they try to follow through more. And they do this hoping that if they act differently long enough, then they'll finally become the different person. But that's backwards. Your actions are not the starting point, your beliefs are the starting point. You don't act your way into a new identity, you believe your way into the new identity. And so today I'm going to talk to you about identity and specifically why identity change, changing who you are, feels so hard. Because if you've ever thought to yourself, this is just who I am, I've always been this way, I struggle to make changes lasting. If you think those things, this is the reason why change feels very hard for you. It's the reason why you don't have the results that you want in your life yet. And I'm not talking this is I need more discipline hard, this is identity hard. The truth about why you haven't achieved the life that you desire by now is because as humans, we don't act in alignment to our goals. We act in alignment to who we believe that we are. And it's very different because you can wake up earlier, you can want to stop overeating, you can want to follow through, you can even pay people to help you follow through. But at the end of the day, if you don't believe you are that person who does those things, you won't do it for long. It will be temporary. All you have to do is think about any weight loss goal you've ever achieved and ask yourself, why didn't I keep that weight loss goal? It's because you didn't believe that you could keep it. You didn't believe that you could eat that way forever. And then what happened is you snapped back into old habits, into old patterns, into your old identity. Because the thing is, identity always wins every single time. So let's pause here and talk about what identity is. Identity is the collection of beliefs that you've gathered about who you are, what you're capable of, and how the world works for you. That's it. And those collection of beliefs were most likely passed down to you subconsciously from your parents, your schools, from things that were spoken over you or to you, directly to you, from your experiences, and ultimately what you made those experiences mean. So if you listen to my most recent episode on This Is Why, I broke down Brooke Castillo's The Model for You. And I talked about how we have the circumstances, and then below the circumstances is our thoughts about them. Okay, so when we're talking about some of these things that were said to you, things that happened to you in your past where you built identity from, we're talking about the circumstances and then what you made that mean. And a lot of the identities that we have today are programmed or were programmed for us when we were children because we didn't have that part of our brain that really questioned things. We didn't question, why would my parents say this about me? Or why would this person say this is what's true about the world? Right? Our prefrontal cortex wasn't yet developed. So a lot of the identities that we have built, they started when we were very young. Okay, so let me give you an example. Imagine somebody grows up in a house where money is tight. Your parents are stressed, bills are always talked about, comments like, life is a struggle, nothing comes easy, money doesn't grow on trees. The kid who hears those words doesn't just hear words, they build a quiet identity. Life is hard, success requires suffering, ease is for other people, money is hard to make. Now, fast forward to when they're an adult, they expect struggle. They overwork, they feel weird when things go smoothly, when money comes easily. And it's not because it's the truth, it's because they are loyal to the identity that they've built around money and how money works for them in their life. And we do this with food, with relationships, with confidence. I'm just somebody who struggles. I've never been disciplined. I can't follow through for very long. And then we gather the evidence, we reinforce it until it just becomes who we think we are and how we describe ourselves to other people. This is the best part of coaching is because clients come to me with their identities that they don't even think are built up. They think that they were born into them, right? And this is the beautiful thing is that identities aren't something that you're born with. Identities were built, they were created, which means they can be deconstructed. They can be rebuilt into what you want them to be, into the identities that serve you. Now, here's where things get a little uncomfortable because some identities are small, maybe a little insignificant, but then there are what I like to call master identities, which is a belief underneath everything else. So this could be life is hard, I struggle, I'm not disciplined, I'm just an anxious person, I'm not meant to have a happy life, bad things always happen to me, I'm not worthy. I'm a boring person. I'm not driven. I could go on. I'm not lovable. I'm not smart. And actually, that last one, that was mine. That was my master identity for most of my life. I must have been 7 years old. And my teacher, I remember it very clearly, in math class, I had shaded outside of the lines, and she got so upset with me. And she said, Jaycee, I just knew that you would screw this up. I remember the shame. I remember the fear, the anxiety of my classmates looking at me. And what I made that circumstance mean, what I made that mean that my teacher said this about me, was that I'm not smart. I carried that throughout elementary school, high school, even university. Even when my classmates weren't passing, who were the smart ones, I would always downplay it. Oh, it was just a fluke. Oh, I worked harder. And I'd always be thinking, somebody's going to find out that I really don't belong here. Somebody's going to find out that I am not smart enough to be in university. And this actually followed me into my professional career as a social worker too. Even in rooms where I objectively knew what I was talking about, I would always have this quiet voice in the back of my head that was like, don't say too much. Don't expose yourself. Don't let them find out. And here's what's wild. Even now, stepping into new levels of leadership and business growth, talking to you on YouTube and on my podcast, I still get activated with this old belief sometimes. Not because it's true, but because it's well rehearsed. It has been practiced for so many years. And that is how identity works. So this is where neuroscience comes in, because identity is not fluffy work. It's not motivational coach speak language. It's your neurology. So you need to pay attention to this. There is a part of your brain called the Reticular Activating System, RAS. And this is a system that filters out around 88 to 90% of what is going on around you. Let that land for a second. 88 to 90%, which means you're noticing on average around 10 to 12% of reality at any given time. Not because you're not paying attention, but because your brain can literally not process everything all at once. Another way of saying this is that 88% of your thinking is unconscious. Some estimates suggest that your brain is processing millions of bits of information per second. So your brain is constantly receiving an overwhelming amount of data, visual inputs, sounds, smells, conversations, movement, faces, language, memory triggers, internal sensations. And your reticular activating system acts like a gatekeeper. It decides what gets through and what doesn't. And now here's the important part for you to remember. It filters based on what your brain already believes is important, which means you don't see reality first and then form beliefs. You form beliefs first, and then your brain lets you see the matching evidence, which is wild, because that means if you believe I'm not smart, your RAS will highlight any information that confirms that. If you believe I always struggle, your brain will scan your environment and hand you that information. Not because your brain is against you, but because your brain is incredibly efficient. It has to reduce the overload. So it prioritizes threats, goals, emotional memory, identity belief, expectations. You are literally living inside of a neurologically filtered version of reality. And this is where cognitive dissonance comes in too, right? When you try to install a new belief, something that opposes the longstanding identity of, let's say, I'm not smart, your brain will feel a ton of tension. Which one is believable? Which one's true? Which way are we going? We don't know. And your brain is always going to default to the old identity because it's tried and true. That is the part of the motivational triad of our amygdala. Avoid pain, seek comfort, and be as efficient as possible. And when you believe the thoughts over and over again, it's very efficient. Your brain rewards you. Your brain wants to think the same thoughts. It does not want to rock the boat. So if I have the belief I'm not smart, and then I handle something very intelligently, there's going to be friction. And friction is the cognitive dissonance. It's very uncomfortable. So your brain will dismiss the new evidence. That doesn't count. That was small. That was luck. Because upgrading to the new identity feels too unfamiliar. And unfamiliar activates the lower brain. The amygdala, the fight or flight part of your brain, doesn't just react to imminent danger, real physical danger. It also reacts to psychological unfamiliarity. And becoming a new version of yourself is very unfamiliar. That's why when so many of my clients are stepping into a new identity, there's this imposter syndrome because our brain is using that RAS system to pay attention to ways that we're still in alignment with the old identity. So it's like for my weight loss clients, it's like, yeah, well, last week I thought I was becoming this normal eater and I was kind of believing it. But then this week I ate off plan. And so I always ask my clients, well, like, how many meals did you eat off plan? And they're like, 2. I'm like, okay, so what about the rest of the meals during the week? They're like, yeah, I followed my plan. I'm like, interesting. And all that's happening is that their survival brain is preferring that old identity over the expanded new upgrade in their identity. Even if the healthy new identity is actually more loving, it's more kind, it's in more alignment with where they want to go and who they want to be. And what else is super interesting is that when I reflect on my past, a lot of the stored memories that I have are the memories that I have when I was exposed or feeling shame or humiliated. And all that was happening when we think about this is that my brain is storing those memories to protect the identity that I had created for myself. See, there it is. I'm not smart. Your brain's always going to preserve the master identity that you have, even if the master identity no longer serves you, even if it is like punching yourself in the face to think and believe those thoughts about yourself. Your brain will always store memories to prove it to be true. And you have to work so much harder to look in your past to prove those identities wrong. But I will tell you, there's always evidence there to prove the contrary true. And it's also worth mentioning that not all identities are negative, right? We have a lot of identities that are very positive too. My own self, I have an identity that I'm a hard worker. And this identity was built at the same time that my master identity of I'm not smart enough was also built. So when I was younger, I had things spoken over me by coaches and teachers and parents that were, Jaycee, you're such a hard worker. I remember my squash coach telling me one particular practice, wow, Jaycee, you're working harder than everybody else here. And these kids are much older than you. I remember that pride feeling inside of me, that feeling of like achievement, of almost excitement, that certainty, that positive emotion, the collection of those positive emotions. My brain held on to that. I have stored memories of all the practices that I pushed myself for. Some of the squash matches where I gave everything and beat that opponent who was ranked much higher than me because the identity felt good. Just like my brain preserved the memories of and reinforced that I'm not smart, it also preserved the moments and the memories where I built the identity of I'm a hard worker. I work hard. So your brain doesn't only protect the negative identities, it protects the identities that you've been emotionally attached to. So if you believe that you're athletic, if that's your identity, you will show up that way in your life. My guess is that you're very active today because you have the identity of you being athletic. If you believe that you're a resilient person, your brain will bring up memories to the surface of times in the past that you've overcome so much, the times that you didn't quit. So the reticular activating system doesn't judge the identity, it just reinforces it, whether it's positive or negative. And this is powerful because you have the proof that your brain knows how to build and reinforce identity because you've done it before. And you also know why it's hard because you have this built-in system that wants to filter out any new identity, okay? So just pay attention. There's nothing wrong with you that it feels hard. It's because you have this reticular activating system that wants to filter out anything that is contrary to your current identities. Okay, so how do we change our identity? The first thing is awareness. You have to be able to catch the sentence running in the background and then build the believable alternatives. This is not affirmation work. This is not just shouting positive things to yourself in front of the mirror. This is finding beliefs that are already there. And how we find beliefs that are already there is we collect evidence. So inside of my programs, both accelerators, I get my clients to collect daily evidence of how it's true that they are stepping into the version of themselves that they want to be, aka the identity that they want. So a question that I have is list 3 things that you did well today. So for my normal eating clients, I say, list 3 things that you did well that pertain to normal eating. So they might say, well, I didn't eat my entire sandwich. I stopped at satisfied. I didn't get full. Okay, well, what could you make that mean about you? And a starting believable thought for them that will then turn into a belief is I'm becoming somebody who doesn't need to eat it all. Okay. If they start to have that belief over and over again, it starts to become, instead of I'm becoming, it becomes I am a normal eater. Notice how we don't go from I'm a normal eater when we don't even believe that's true. It's because that doesn't ignite an emotion inside of us. There has to be an emotion there. So if you believe today I didn't eat everything that was on my plate, this is how I eat in the future, what could I make that mean about me? I am becoming my future self as an eater. You are stepping into the identity as a normal eater. Because remember, if you don't consciously store the new evidence that you're creating for yourself, your brain, that RAS, will discard it. It's like it didn't even happen. So you literally have to try on and put on your new self. And actually, the Bible talks about this in Ephesians 4:22. It says, put off your old self and be made new in the attitude of your mind. What happens in our mind? We are thinking new thoughts. So put off, be made new, put on. That's identity language. That's not behavior modification. That is renewal of the mind, which changes the identity and then it changes the behavior. And identity work isn't a new concept. You see it all throughout scripture. Think about King David. Before he was King David, he was a shepherd boy. He was the youngest sibling. He was managing the sheep in the field. And when the prophet Samuel came to Jesse's house to anoint the next king, Jesse, David's father, didn't even bring David in. He brought the older sons first, the ones who looked the part. David wasn't even considered. His current identity didn't match the calling. But at some point, David had to put off the identity as just the shepherd boy. He had to step into something that didn't match his environment yet. He had to lead before it felt familiar. And what happened next, the very moment next that we see David in, he's standing in front of Goliath, a giant, while trained soldiers are backing down. That's identity shift, because shepherd boys don't typically walk onto battlefields to face giants. But someone who sees himself as called, as anointed, as capable through God, he steps forward. And I'm sure that probably didn't feel comfortable. From shepherd boy to giant slayer, from youngest overlooked brother to future king. Pretty sure his reticular activating system was putting up a little bit of a challenge. If David had clung to, I'm just the youngest, I'm just a shepherd boy, I'm not qualified, he never would have stepped into the role that he was called to. And at some point, you have to release the identity that no longer serves the calling over your life. The identity that you are called to step into. So here's what I want you to sit with. What identity have you built? How do you see yourself? How do you believe life works for you? And most importantly, what part of that identity have you outgrown? Not because you don't struggle with it anymore, but because you don't want it anymore, because it no longer serves you. The tension that you feel inside when you imagine who you would have to become to step into that identity, that is growth. That is the growth that awaits for you. That is your curriculum. And yes, your brain will resist because it wants you safe. But safety and expansion, they're not the same thing. Safety keeps you stuck where you're at. Expansion requires you to get up and move, to pay attention to your brain, to manage your mind, and to deliberately, consciously turn on the part of your brain that is going to pay attention to the thoughts and the beliefs that you have that no longer serve you. So if one of your biggest struggles has been with food and weight loss, I want you to really understand what stands in your way of lasting change is the identity that you built around it. So you might think thoughts like, I struggle with food, I can't trust myself, change is impossible for me in this area. All of that is identity. And that's not just behavior. It's belief. It's at the belief level. Inside my 10-10-10 normal eating accelerator, for 10 straight weeks, we work on identity shifts. And I coach you every single week when old beliefs come up. Things like, see, you messed up. See, you can't do this for very long, or change is going to be impossible for you. You're going to bring all of the thoughts and the beliefs that you have, and I'm going to coach you week after week. And by the end of those 10 weeks, you will be eating like a normal eater, and most importantly, you will be thinking, feeling, acting, and creating the result of I am the normal eater that I've always wanted to be. That is the transformation. So if that's you, if that's your main struggle, your main identity that you have in your life right now that you want to change, just check out the link in the show notes and join me starting next week. We start every week on a Monday. I know, the irony. And if your struggle isn't food, if there's another identity running your life. I don't follow through. I'm anxious. I start, but I can't finish. I can't handle the pressure. I'm not capable of more. I'm not confident enough. And you know there's an identity there because you're not stepping fully into the version of your life that you know that you want to be living. If that's you, then the For Good Life Accelerator is going to be the path that I want you to come with me on. This is going to be 10 powerful weeks of coaching. I'm going to coach you on the identity shift that you want. You're going to step into the new identity of who you want to be so that you can live the life that you desperately want to live, which I call the For Good Life. This is going to move you from passive learning to actively stepping into the newest and best possible version of yourself. And for those of you who are not interested right now, I just want to say thank you for being here. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to share it with somebody that you know. And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit save, subscribe, and leave me a comment and tell me, what identity are you working on this year? I would love to hear. And if you haven't yet, please check out this video. I know that you're going to love it. All right. I will see you next time. Bye. Hey, it's Jaycee. Super quick. If this episode resonated with you and you want to take this further, I have 2 ways that you can work with me directly. Path number 1 is for the woman or man who wants to become a normal eater. You're going to work with me for 10 weeks, and by the end of those 10 weeks, you will be the normal eater that you've always desired to be. The second path is my 10-week For Good Life Accelerator. This is for you if you want to up-level every area of your life, build emotional capacity, strengthen follow-through, and develop real self-trust so that you wake up every single day doing the thing that you know that you want to do so that you can build the life that you've always been meant to create. Both programs are going to help you tap into your potential so that you can live the For Good Life, the life without so much unnecessary suffering, and a life lived on purpose. And if you're not ready for weekly coaching or to accelerate your progress, I've attached 2 free trainings in the show notes. The first teaches my For Good method, the 2 steps to normal eating, and the second teaches you how to manage your mind in real time while you're feeling discomfort. And for ongoing teaching, emotional mastery, mind management, intentional living, and how to get out of your own way, join me here on YouTube weekly, hit subscribe, and I will see you on the next episode.